The United States dollar, the world's leading reserve currency, is facing unprecedented challenges from multiple fronts. It's still the most held currency globally, but its dominance has been waning for decades, with some calling it the end of the dollar hegemony. The war in Ukraine and China's zero-COVID policies have resulted in supply chain bottlenecks that are inflating prices around the world, but particularly in the United States, where inflation has reached 40-year highs. On top of that, we are seeing central banks diversify away from the dollar. Major economies like China and Russia have taken steps to reduce their exposure to the greenback, while other countries have started to trade in local currencies. So, is this the beginning of the end for the dollar? Is it losing its status as the global currency of choice? What alternatives are available, and how might these changes impact us? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming videos. The United States dollar has long been the world's leading currency. Why? The main reason was the strength of the US economy. After World War II, it became the currency of choice for international transactions, and gradually most countries pegged their currency to the dollar. As a result, the dollar became the world's dominant reserve currency. The importance of this can be seen by looking at the volume of dollars traded every day. In 2021, the dollar accounted for 88% of all foreign exchange transactions. And when it comes to foreign bank reserves, it's even more important. According to the International Monetary Fund, the dollar accounts for 59% of total foreign exchange holdings. However, since the turn of the century, the popularity of the dollar has declined. When the euro was introduced in 1999, many countries began shifting their reserves away from the dollar. Today, the euro is the second most held currency in the world, accounting for 20% of foreign exchange holdings. While the dollar's share of global currency reserves has declined from 70% in 2000 to 59% in 2021, several factors have contributed to this decline. One is the rise of China. Over the past decade, China has become an economic powerhouse. Its GDP grew rapidly. Poverty was reduced and millions were lifted out of desperate circumstances. To fund its massive growth, China accumulated trillions of dollars in foreign exchange reserves. However, China's massive current account surplus means that it's been selling dollars for yuan, further increasing the demand for the Chinese currency. In 2016, China became the largest holder of US dollars in the world, overtaking Japan, and even though the US Treasury recently announced that China's holdings decreased to $850 billion in January, down from a peak of over $1 trillion in 2013, China still holds over 18% of US dollar-denominated foreign exchange reserves. Another factor contributing to the decline is the sheer size of the United States federal debt, which totaled almost $30 trillion in 2021 alone. A Bloomberg article argues that this debt undermines faith in the dollar and makes investors hesitant to hold the currency. But perhaps the biggest threat to the dollar's dominance is the rise of cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin. In recent years, we have witnessed the explosive growth of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin has gone from being worth just a few $1,000s in 2011 to almost $50,000 today. This rise in popularity has led some investors to speculate that Bitcoin could eventually replace the dollar as the world's leading currency. Furthermore, the growing popularity of non-sovereign currencies like Bitcoin threatens the power of governments to control their country's monetary policy. If individuals and businesses start using cryptocurrencies instead of government-issued currencies, then governments will have less power to print money and set interest rates. So, what do these numbers tell us? Well, they tell us that the dollar is no longer as dominant as it once was. But they don't necessarily spell doom and gloom for the greenback. Remember, although the dollar's share of foreign exchange holdings has declined from 70% to 59%, it's still the world's most popular currency, with 59% of all foreign exchange reserves being denominated in US dollars. Now let's talk about the recent events that might lead to the de-dollarization of the world. First, let's look at the war in Ukraine. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the West responded with a series of sanctions. These sanctions include banning Russian banks from SWIFT, the international payment system, as well as freezing Russia's foreign reserves. These actions have led some countries to question the safety of holding US dollars. For example, in March, China's foreign minister warned that the dollar's hegemonic status is being challenged. And if the United States weaponizes the dollar again, it would accelerate the demise of the dollar. Furthermore, as a result of these sanctions, many countries have realized that they are too dependent on Western financial systems. This is especially true of countries in Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East, which rely heavily on Russia and Ukraine for food and energy supplies. As a result, these countries are seeking to diversify their holdings and reduce their exposure to the dollar. The second factor to consider is China's zero-COVID policies. In an effort to contain the spread of the virus, China has implemented strict lockdowns and travel restrictions. This has led to widespread shortages of goods and services, which has in turn caused inflation around the world. For example, the Shanghai lockdown has led to a shortage of computer chips, which has in turn affected the global supply of cars. This shortage has also led to an increase in the price of used cars. Similarly, the lockdown has also led to a shortage of medical equipment, which has in turn led to an increase in the price of healthcare. So basically, what we are witnessing today is the combined effect of two major events. The first is the war in Ukraine, and the second is China's zero-COVID policies. These events have led to a decline in the use of the dollar, as well as a decrease in its value. In response to these events, central banks around the world are taking steps to protect their economies. The European Central Bank, for example, has raised interest rates for the first time in over 11 years. Meanwhile, the Bank of England has warned that the UK could face a recession this year. The Federal Reserve is also taking steps to combat inflation. In May, the Fed raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point and signaled that more increases are on the way. However, these measures are unlikely to have an immediate impact on inflation. According to the IMF, inflation is expected to remain high throughout 2022 and 2023. This means that the pressure on the dollar is likely to continue. Despite these challenges, it's important to remember that the dollar is not going anywhere anytime soon. It remains the world's leading currency and is still widely used for international transactions. However, the recent events have made it clear that the dollar's dominance is under threat. If the United States wants to maintain its position as the world's leading economy, it needs to take steps to protect the dollar. This includes working to improve relations with China and Russia, as well as finding ways to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels. If it can do these things, then the dollar should be able to retain its position as the world's leading currency. But what does this mean for us? Well, it means that we should be prepared for a future where the dollar is no longer the world's leading currency. This could lead to greater volatility in the foreign exchange markets, as well as higher inflation. It could also make it more expensive to travel or buy imported goods. However, it's also important to remember that the dollar is not going anywhere anytime soon. So we don't need to panic. Instead, we should focus on what we can control. This includes saving money, diversifying our investments, and staying informed about what's happening in the global economy. By doing these things, we can help ensure that we are prepared for whatever challenges may come our way. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more weekly investment tips. We wish you good luck and a profitable day.